It seems like every 5 months there's a new slightly overweight and slightly depressed person in their late 20s or early 30s who decides to make a YouTube channel centered around gaming. They probably focus on games from the 4th, 5th, and 6th generation of home consoles. And they talk about these games with such knowledge and passion that it genuinely makes me believe these games are only a couple of years old. But they're not. They're like 20 or 25 years old. And it's not just YouTube. I scroll Twitter and I see pictures of old technology from the 90s. I scroll TikTok and I see the most specifically nostalgic stuff like discontinued products from my childhood or specific scenes and feelings that somebody specifically around my age would resonate with. There's also tons of cool streamers on TikTok who have their camera pointed at their CRTs and a room filled with retro knickknacks. Dude, I saw this one TikTok about Doritos Crash Course and it was saying that like Doritos Crash Course came out over 5,000 days ago and it was playing like that really sad TikTok music and I just froze when I saw that. I couldn't believe how long it had been when you put it in such simple numbers and it made me think like, damn. What has my life been like the last 5,000 days? That is the existential crisis that Doritos Crash Course just gave me. My YouTube algorithm has been recommending me lots of videos of old midnight launches for games like Halo 3 or Modern Warfare 2. And when I check the comments, many of them are extremely recent, meaning that I am not the only one getting these videos recommended to them. There's cool channels like Vampire Robot, which is an awesome collection of footage from inside stores and places from the 90s, 80s, and early 2000s. And even though it could be something as simple as walking into a video game section of a Walmart in 2003, these videos give me such a powerful feeling. For a fraction of a second, my brain feels like it's there again. Back in the days of drinking Mondo, playing Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion, and watching shows like Two Stupid Dogs and Samurai Jack. We've even gotten to the point where people deliberately, on purpose, watch old commercial compilations on YouTube. If I could go back in time and tell childhood me that one day you will want to watch these old commercials, he would laugh at me. But I do it anyway just to chase that feeling that I get for 0.5 of a second. That feeling like I'm a kid again. But that feeling does wash away very quickly, and I'm left with the reminder that I live in the time of AI and social media. Nostalgia is a powerful thing, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but I think it's important to remember the etymology of the word nostalgia literally means pain. It was a combination of the words homecoming and pain. It was once seen as an overwhelming depressive state that could cause people to become inactive. But nowadays, nostalgia is kind of seen as this rosy and sweet feeling. We think of staying home from school because it's a snow day and mom makes us chicken noodle soup and we get to watch all the weird daytime TV shows we never got to see because we would normally be in school. We think of the best moments of our childhood, but really, nostalgia equals pain. Pretty fucking metal. And while I don't always feel sad after being nostalgic, I do sometimes. There's something cruel about the linearity of time. From the moment we're born, we can only go forward, and for many people, it's not until they hit their late teens or their early 20s that they truly realize and appreciate that. So ironically, it's those safest and easiest and most fun years that we take the most for granted, and we often wish we can go back to them. It's also important to mention, of course, that corporations have realized our fondness for nostalgia and have been marketing it to us constantly for the past decade plus. Feel free in the comments to pinpoint an earlier example of this, but to me, one of the first major examples of this was Toy Story 3 back in 2010. It had been 11 years since Toy Story 2, so if you were 7 years old and you saw Toy Story 2 in the movie theaters, you were now 18 when Toy Story 3 came out, a totally different stage of your life. You might even scoff at the idea of seeing an animated film in theaters. It was enough time to make you feel like, oh, Toy Story? Damn, I remember that. It also hits twice as hard because the same amount of time passed in the actual plot of the movie. Andy was no longer a kid playing with his toys, and neither were we. Toy Story 3 was of course a huge success, and I think a lot of companies realize that people will spend a lot of money to feel like a kid again. It's those earliest years in the 2010s where the marketability of nostalgia really became a thing. We can even see it in the types of games that were big at the time. Games like Super Meat Boy, Undertale, Shovel Knight, Stardew Valley. They weren't concerned about bringing games forward in terms of graphics or gameplay. They actually went back to old styles of design and completely mastered them. Around this same time, I remember people acting like PS1 graphics were the ugliest thing in the world, and now look at where we are. You can't go 5 days without a new indie game coming out with PS1 inspired graphics, and people love it. I love it. I've always noticed this connection between gamers and nostalgia. We always seem to look back in fondness, even if it was something at the time we actually didn't like. There's this famous meme of the Zelda cycle, where when a new Zelda game releases, everyone hates it. But if you give it a few years, people will look back and be like, wow, what a classic, I always loved it. Somehow the years just make us softer. We always seem to prefer a few years ago than we do today. I'm even seeing memes now of people feeling nostalgic for the 3DS, and it's like, damn, because I kinda get it. The 3DS was the last handheld that came out when I was still a kid. I was 14 when it released, and I played it all throughout high school. I was excited for every new game like Kirby Triple Deluxe and Fire Emblem Fates. But by the time the Switch came out, I was 20. I had been out of school and working for 2 years. The days of asking for video games for Christmas were over. I had to buy every game myself. I had to save money for rent and bills. One turnover to a new piece of hardware means that a significant portion of my life was over. And gamers have always looked backwards. Since the mid-1990s, people have been emulating older games. If you've always really been into games, you probably had that phase as a teenager where you tried to download every emulator and every ROM that you can think of. It's how I first got familiar with many classics. But many of these gamers, once they get older and get a stable job, and if they're lucky enough to have disposable income in this shitty economy, many of them go out of their way to capture that feeling and authenticity of playing older games. Retro game stores are bigger than ever. There's entire businesses dedicated to old games. People hunt at thrift stores, garage sales, Facebook Marketplace for huge, chunky CRT televisions so their older games can look the best they possibly can. I love just surfing the CRT gaming subreddit and just seeing these cozy pictures of people playing their favorite games on old TVs. These pictures give me the same feeling of when I'm sipping mint tea at night with my blanket wrapped around me. If everyone gets their own personalized heaven, mine would probably look like this. I've been trying to make my room feel like something out of the early 2000s. I went to Goodwill and I found this TV stand for like $30, and I don't know if it's just me, but it fits the vibe I want perfectly. Having a game room or a retro game room is also not uncommon. I'm not really in touch with other hobbies as much as I am with gaming, but like, are movie people doing this? Are music people doing this? I know there are people who build home theaters, and I know there are tons of DVD and Blu-ray collectors out there, but are there like people who refuse to watch a movie made in the 1980s on Blu-ray and only watch them on VHS? For music people, do you refuse to listen to old music on streaming and only listen to it on vinyl or cassette? Do movie people look at Citizen Kane the way many gamers look at Mario 3? There are tons of retro game stores, but I've never really seen a retro movie store or a retro music store. If you walk into a record shop, they still have like the newest Billie Eilish or Tyler the Creator. But I have walked into retro game stores that are just dedicated to old stuff. In December of 2024, it was revealed that only 15% of Steam users were playing new games that came out that year. And in April of 2024, it was revealed in 2023, 60% of playtime was dedicated to games 6 years or older. Granted, much of that playtime was given to live service games like Fortnite and Roblox, which have been around for a while now. But still, overall, gamers don't want to move on, and I'm definitely a part of that. I was looking at my top 25 games of all time, and only 6 of them came out in the last 20 years. Most of my favorite games are over 2 decades old. I haven't even mentioned this entire subgenre of gaming content that basically boils down to modern gaming sucks, my childhood games were peak. And this type of content isn't necessarily new. Many of the YouTubers I watched back in the day weren't talking about the newest games on the Xbox 360 or PS3 at the time. They were talking about their favorite childhood games on the Super Nintendo or PS1. I honestly credit a lot of these YouTubers for getting me into older games. As a very little kid, I was playing mostly PS2 and GBA, but by the time I was 13 or 14, I was going back and playing shit from way before I was born. Besides just nostalgia, gamers have a deep connection to the internet. Even if you're an older gamer and you grew up with the Atari or the NES, by the time the World Wide Web started popping up in many households, you were probably a tween or a teenager who found other people online talking about the same games you loved as a kid, and it made you want to talk about them too. The timeline of video game consoles and internet technology almost go hand in hand. Video games have been trying to utilize the internet since basically the beginning. Even the Famicom tried doing it. Apparently you could check the weather and bet on horse races on your fucking Famicom. That is so cool. This intense nostalgia and desire to look backwards feels so married to gamers. Games, just by their nature of interactivity and having music, story, characters, mechanics, they require so much more from a person experiencing it than something like a film or TV. There are locations, songs, and moments that can be burned into our memory. And when I replay my favorite games, it can sometimes feel like I'm back in those memories. I remember one time in my high school days, I woke up in the middle of the night with an intense stomach ache. I tried for hours, but I just couldn't go back to sleep. So after accepting that I would just stay awake, I fired up my current save file in Wind Waker, and I played through the Tower of the Gods dungeon. There was something about it being 4 in the morning, nobody else in my apartment awake, the quiet of the night, combined with that strange yet intimidating music that really just stuck with me. I was so focused on solving the puzzles that my stomach ache was no longer my number one focus. And whenever I replay Wind Waker and get to the Tower of the Gods, I always feel connected to my teenage self playing through this segment for the first time. I'm not that same person anymore. I'm not as naive or hopeful as I was back then. But there's one thing me now and me back then still have in common. We still make time to play Wind Waker because we both love it. It's cool to see what little things stay in our memories while seemingly more important things escape it. I remember one day coming home from school and my dad asked me to check the mail for him. I opened the mailbox and there was a copy of Lego Indiana Jones for the PS2 waiting for me. I was so excited, man. Certain times of the year also get me feeling different forms of nostalgia too. The summer reminds me of Xbox Summer of Arcade and playing games like Castle Crashers and Dust for the first time. The holiday season with its red and green lights everywhere and slight sense of optimism always makes me want to bring out some of my favorite games of all time like Super Metroid or Chrono Trigger for a replay. To bring you back down again for a second, sorry, I think another reason gamers are so nostalgic is probably the brutal corporatization of their favorite industry. Games have of course always been a business and have always been made to make money, but with shit like every publisher chasing a live service game, never being satisfied despite selling millions of copies, shipping out broken games, and getting rid of things like cheat codes and alternate costumes so they can sell it to you as DLC, it's pretty clear that most AAA publishers don't care about their customers. Maybe games really were better back in the day. I love nostalgia. I think it's a very interesting and powerful feeling. It's this thing that, when you really think about it, it's completely useless. It doesn't really do anything for us. Other feelings can actually benefit us. Confidence can make us do things that we would normally be too scared to do. Intrigue can make us learn new things. Even more negative feelings like anxiety can be useful. If you're anxious about walking down a sketchy looking street in the middle of the night, that's your brain trying to protect you from harm. But nostalgia, it doesn't really do anything for us. It can stop us in our tracks and remember feelings, experiences, and people who are no longer with us. So why do we love this bittersweet feeling so much? Why do gamers love it so much? I don't really know, but I'm glad we do.